Come as you are, as you were, as I want you to be. Hey, how long you been there watching me? Oh, you can't be sneaking up on people like that. So that song right there, that song is called Come As You Are by the band Nirvana. And the man that wrote that song is the lead singer, Kurt Cobain. Kurt Cobain has a long list of songs, a genius catalog that he wrote for the band. Now, it was a short amount of time that we got to experience this genius, because on April 5th, 1994, the man behind that, the voice of Nirvana, was silenced. So Kurt Cobain was born on February 20th, 1967 in Aberdeen, Washington, not far outside of Seattle. Now, his family had a history of musical talent. His uncle Chuck, he played in a band called the Beachcombers. He had an Aunt Mari. She played guitar. She would jam out with local bands around the area. And then he had an uncle, his great uncle Delbert. Now, this guy was an Irish tenor. And in 1930, he was in a movie called The King of Jazz. So they say when Kurt Cobain was 2 years old, he was already walking around the house singing songs or trying to sing songs. He had a tone. He caught the music bug early. When he turned 4, he already started learning how to play the piano. So he was young, and it was just in his blood. It was in 1979 when he was a young man. His parents ended up getting a divorce. He would move in with his father. His father got custody. And his teenage rebellion got so out of hand, his father couldn't handle it. So his father let him move in with a friend named Jesse Reed, who was him and his family born-again Christians. So Kurt decided he was going to become a devout Christian with them. He started attending church with the family. So for Kurt's birthday in 1981, his uncle asked him, do you want a bicycle or do you want a guitar? Kurt said a guitar. So the moment that guitar touched Kurt's hands in 1981, he would never stop playing. He actually ended up moving back in with his mom around that time, and he was still attending high school. It was his second year of high school when he moved back in with his mom. But a few weeks before graduation, Kurt dropped out. So in 1985, he ended up hooking up with some friends, and he started performing in a band called Fecal Matter. On a quick side note, before Kurt actually dropped out of high school, there was a kid that he attended with named Chris Novoselic. Now, Chris was one of the few people he could get along with and relate to in high school. He wanted to form a band with Chris, who wasn't interested at the time when he first asked him. So when he went on to form Fecal Matter and drop out, he actually played in Fecal Matter with a member of his favorite band. His favorite band was the Melvins, and there was a man named Dale Croner who played the drums for the Melvins, but he actually played bass in Fecal Matter. There was a man named Greg Hawkinson who ended up playing the drums in Fecal Matter, and those guys just loved to play, period. Now, he also went on in many interviews to say later how much he respected and loved the Melvins, so he had a big admiration for him. Now, when he was performing with Fecal Matter, there was so many rehearsals where Kurt would just go out and practice all these originals for the band. But he would also do all these covers for bands like Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, and the Ramones. So Kurt Cobain still kept trying to convince Chris Novoselic to form a band with him. He eventually went to him and showed him a demo tape that he had recorded with Fecal Matter. Now, Chris still didn't want to join a band at the time, but after a few months, after hearing the demo a few times, he went back to Kurt and said, okay, I'll form a band with you. So they got together and they ended up settling on the name Nirvana. So Nirvana was finally getting going. They started performing, doing shows around the Seattle area. The thing was, they just couldn't get a steady drummer. They kept going through drummers. They finally settled on a guy named Chad Channing as their drummer when they recorded their first album, Bleach. Bleach was released by Sub Pop Records in 1989. But it wasn't long after the release of the album that Cobain was just dissatisfied with the style at which Chad was drumming. So he would go to him and let him know that he was fired. So the search for a drummer was on. Chris and Kurt searched. They eventually decided to settle on a man named Dave Grohl. We all know Dave Grohl. He was a lot younger than the other two at the time, but he was going to sit in. He was going to be in the studio as they recorded their next album, their 1991 album, Nevermind. Nevermind was released, and their first single, Smells Like Teen Spirit, rocked the charts. And from then, it was on. It was on. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. The grunge movement was on. They were the flagship band for Generation X. This gave bands like Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, all kinds of play on the radio in the early 90s. They were killing it. These bands got their chance. The style was on. The sound was in. And all those metal bands and hair metal bands from the 80s, that was gone just like that. If you want to talk about a perfect example of overnight success, this was Nirvana. When Nevermind was released, that was it. I mean, they exploded so fast, it was insane. The world just absolutely knew who Nirvana was like that. It was so quick. It happened so fast. And now a lot of people wouldn't know how to handle this kind of success, or they would let it get to their head real quick. If not instantly, it wouldn't take long for them to just get so big-headed. That wasn't Kurt. That wasn't his style. That wasn't who he was. And it was really hard for him to reconcile his underground roots, where he came from, the underground punk rock scene, his style of music, to what he was. And he really, really got after those fans who claimed to be fans after their big success, just getting into songs like Smells Like Teen Spirit and whatever was on the radio, and not knowing Nirvana that was before that. He said they were frauds, they were fakes. They didn't really agree with all the political beliefs that Nirvana and Kurt had. They just didn't really understand the band. They were only going for the mainstream stuff. And he couldn't get his head around it. That just wasn't Kurt. He was such a mellow, down-to-earth guy. And all this instant success just didn't make sense to him. So Kurt's love life was a whole crazy thing in itself. He met Courtney Love in 1990 before Nirvana actually blew up with the release of Nevermind. They ended up having a daughter in 1992, August 18th to be exact. Frances Bean Cobain was born. Now there's a very, very crazy article that was written by Vanity Fair, and it's very well known and documented, this article. Basically they said that Courtney Love admitted to using drugs while she was pregnant with Frances Bean. Courtney Love made a big deal about it, said that was absolutely false. They mistook her words. Child Protective Services ended up getting involved, going to Kurt and Courtney's house. It was a whole big deal. They almost lost their child. But we all know now that Kurt was a heroin addict. Courtney was a heroin addict. It's not so far-fetched to think that she was doing that. But this was just what it was. It was two people consumed by drugs that I'm guessing they loved each other. But when you got a mixture of drugs and a lot of money and just obvious depression that Kurt admitted to having many times, it's just a bad recipe for a bad life. So there was a big situation when Nirvana was touring. They were in Munich, Germany, and it was March of 93. Courtney Love flew out there to be with Kurt. And one night, he was really sick because he was diagnosed with bronchitis. So he flew to Rome to a hospital to get checked out. And they went to a room after he left the hospital. And the next morning, Courtney Love woke up to find him passed out, and he called an ambulance. He had drank a bunch of champagne and took a bunch of Rohypnol. He was taken to the hospital. He was there for a few days. He was eventually released. Courtney Love released a statement saying that Kurt was attempting to take his own life when he did that. So I'm going to do you a real quick timeline. After Courtney and Kurt left Rome, they headed back to Seattle. On March 18th, there was an incident at the home where Kurt locked himself in a room, threatening to kill himself with a gun. Courtney called the police. They arrived. They were able to talk him out of it, but they confiscated all of his guns. On March 25th, friends and family set up an intervention for Kurt because of his drug use. When he arrived, it angered him, and he was enraged, and he stormed out. A friend later was able to talk some sense into him and convince him to go to a rehabilitation center. So on March 30th, he was in Los Angeles entering a rehab center. The next night after arriving in LA, he boarded a plane back to Seattle. On that plane ride, he sat next to Guns N' Roses bassist Duff McKagan. Now, it seems kind of odd, but apparently Duff said it wasn't a bad flight later in an interview. They talked a lot. But Duff also said everything in his heart, all of his instincts told him something was badly wrong. On April 7th, spokesperson for Nirvana would pull the band out of the Lollapalooza tour amid possible split-up rumors of the band. So on April 8th in 1994, that was a big day. For me, I was turning 6 years old. It was my birthday. But at the same time, at Kurt Cobain's Lake Washington Boulevard home in Seattle, there was an electrician going over there to update a security system. When he climbed up to the upstairs apartment above the garage, he entered. When he entered, he found the body of Kurt Cobain dead. So ever since that day, Kurt Cobain left this world. There's been so many rumors and speculation on what really happened. As it goes, plain and simple, in police reports, they got it as a suicide. A shotgun shot to the head. Self-inflicted. Now, so many people have went down this rabbit hole of conspiracy theories and crazy things, and maybe we'll never know. But I know one thing, that we lost a great artist, and it just seems like it happens too often. You got to wonder, heavy drug use, one thing, but there's so many people out there, whether you're a celebrity or not, we all can fall victim to depression and just being down on ourselves in the world. I think Kurt was at that point. Whether some of the crazy conspiracies of somebody else killing him are right, or it is what it is, he shot himself and took his own life. It's really sad that somebody can get to that position where that's going through their head, where the only option is to take their own life. All right, everybody. So this is where we're going to end it today, but I just wanted to tell you, I didn't want to make this a sad video because it is a sad tragedy, what happened with Kurt Cobain, but it should be very happy in a sense that what he left us with, the genius he left on this planet. You got to wonder, though, had Kurt Cobain still been around, what would have been? You know, it's always going to be on people's mind when we lose people that early that are doing great things. And he was definitely doing great. Now, obviously, you've seen there was some stuff going on there toward the end with the band. We don't know if Nirvana would have stayed together, but I guarantee Kurt Cobain would have continued to make music in some form or fashion. But we should always remember Kurt Cobain. And if you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. It'll help me grow. I can continue telling stories to a larger, more vast audience if the videos are put out there more. That's you helping me. If you hit that like button, you hit the subscribe, you're helping me grow. And in a sense, I can continue helping people because everybody's story should be told. Every story, period, should be told no matter what it is. You know, some people out there just need to hear things that they don't know. Younger audiences, even some older audiences that just didn't get it in the time, something like that, you know. But it was a great time in the United States. When the grunge movement came in, it was like a storm. It came and it went. And Nirvana definitely put their stamp on it. So much love and respect to Nirvana. I love their music and I love the guys that are in the band. Obviously, Dave Grohl went on to do amazing things. Chris Novoselic's still around. It's just amazing. So again, everybody, let's not be sad. Let's be happy because Kurt left us with a lot. Could have been more, but we got what we got. So to anybody out there that's suffering from mental health issues or depression, please, you know, don't feel like your only option is to do what Kurt did. That's not the only option. Please talk to somebody. Talk to anybody out there. And if you know somebody that's suffering from that, please reach out and try to help. It doesn't hurt to try and help. You know, in the end, we all make our own decisions. But like I said, let's be happy. Thank God we got what we got from Kurt. So remember, like and subscribe. American Dream Channel. You know what we do here. We dream big. Thank you, everybody. Till next time.